friends, my fellow freedom lovers, sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning to L3 Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful realms of planet Earth, and today's date is Sunday, October 10th, 2021. Man, I thought it was a Monday. I'm like, good grief. Time flies, when you're having fun and all that, and you got stuff on your mind. It's part of human nature. It happens. But I gotta laugh at myself, too, so. But I'm doing all right, just chilling a little bit and doing my thing. That's all I have to say. Yeah, I was keeping my eye out on that one volcano in Canary Islands in Spain. Mount Palma, I think it's called. Yeah, I was watching, wow, it erupted. Looks like it was one side of the cone exploded. Reminds me of the time what happened with Mount St. Helens in around 1982 or 83, as I recall. That happened in the Washington area. So, speaking of state of Washington, or Seattle to be exact, it looks like, Jerkins and the clowns over there are at it again. They believe they know best. Like they are the geniuses because they're in those positions. Wow. But, I was just browsing through here and, got this from Infowars.com. I had to verify everything, and it has facts and sources to back it up. So this is episode 1404. Seattle may fire 40% of their police force. So it'll be, Seattle may fire 40% of police force. So I just got to take down notes too. So the article here from Infowars is entitled Seattle may fire 40% of police force over COVID vaccine mandate. Just came out a little over a couple of hours ago, right? Yeah, about that. So let's check out what it says here. The city of Seattle is considering firing 40% of its police officers for failing to take COVID-19 injection by its October 18th deadline. The 1,000-person police force, which has already suffered mass layoffs following the George Floyd riots in 2020, socially engineered, of course, may see an additional 403 officers fired from the force. The environment has been pretty toxic and negative. An unnamed officer told Fox 13 News not just from this whole mandate, but prior to that as well. I'm not so sure this would be a good place for me to work long term for my mental health. It has been very stressful. So, I'm going to actually play you that clip. That's from Fox 13, and let's just check it out.
We begin tonight with more exclusive reporting on the vaccine mandate and what it could mean for public safety. Thanks for joining us for the news at 5. I'm Jamie Tompkins.
I'm Hannah Kim. Seattle police are mobilizing all available resources as the city prepares to potentially fire hundreds of officers who do not show proof of a COVID-19 vaccine. Fox 13 political reporter Brandy Cruz has been all over this story for us.
Yeah, Brandy, how dire is this situation really?
Well, we have to start this conversation by realizing Seattle police are already in a dire situation. They're in a staffing crisis that seems to be getting worse and worse by the month. And so everything we talk about from here, it just gets more dire. And I hate to paint a grim picture, but we're talking about public safety. It's very serious. You have a department, like I said, in the middle of a staffing crisis, at a time of rising crime, at a time of unacceptably high 911 response times. And as the October 18th vaccine deadline looms, top brass at SPD are growing frantic behind the scenes. Already short-staffed, the Seattle Police Department is preparing for a potential mass firing of officers. Starting October 13th, the agency will move into what's called a Stage 3 mobilization. What the department's manual says is reserved for scenarios that have the, quote, potential to cause significant harm, property destruction, or widespread public fear. It means all sworn personnel, even detectives assigned to specialty units, must come to work in uniform and prepared to respond to 911 calls. According to an internal memo first obtained by Fox 13, 354 sworn personnel had not submitted proof of vaccination as of Tuesday. That number dropped to 292 today. But still, that's more than 25% of all deployable officers.
Losing even 50 to 75 officers in legitimately one day the response times for the city will go up drastically.
We spoke with this unvaccinated SPD officer who works out of the West Precinct downtown. He asked to have his identity withheld, hoping that there's still a chance the city will grant him a religious accommodation.
Now, let's say they come back and they say your religious accommodation is not approved. You have to get the vaccine. Do you know what you're going to do?
I will not get the vaccine. I will continue working until the day that they fire me. And that's about all I can do.
In previous interviews, Mayor Jenny Durkan has been evasive about whether she'll truly follow through on firing officers.
I believe it's going to happen is most police officers are going to get this vaccination.
But if they don't,
what I've seen and see, Brandy, you can have your hypothesis. Mine is the opposite of yours.
On Monday, the mayor sent this email to city employees as the clock ticks down to decision day. She wrote, "We value each of you and do not want to lose you as employees, but the people that count on you the most are the ones that need you to get vaccinated." We also spoke with Governor Jay Inslee at an event in Port Angeles to ask him about the possibility of losing first responders over vaccine mandates, not only in Seattle, but across the state.
These are hardworking people. They're doing good work. We want them to stay on the team.
So I don't see it as me throwing a career away. I feel personally that I'm being pushed out.
This unvaccinated patrol officer has been with SPD for nearly 5 years. She asked us to hide her identity because even if the city changes its mind at the last minute, she plans to find another local agency to work for.
The environment has been pretty toxic, negative, just from this whole mandate. And prior to that as well, I'm not sure that this would be a good place for me to work long term. For my mental health, it's been very, very stressful.
Now, there's another layer in this that has developed this afternoon that I have to be honest, when I heard it from sources, I thought that can't be true. But indeed, it is true because I've confirmed it with the Seattle Police Department. I mentioned there are 292 sworn personnel with SPD yet to submit proof of a COVID-19 vaccination. Well, there are also 111 sworn personnel who are currently awaiting the results of their exemption requests. And for some reason, those 111 were not counted in the 292. Because in theory, if their accommodation gets approved, then they don't need to submit proof of a COVID vaccination. So in theory, you could have as many as 403 sworn personnel who actually aren't vaccinated. Now, that being said, I will say I don't believe the number is that high. Mm-hmm. You're going to have some officers who, maybe they're not anti-vaccine, but they don't like the mandate, and they're not going to submit proof until the very last second, just to, prove a point out of principle. But like I said earlier, we're in the middle of a staffing crisis, rising crime. Any fraction of that number, 403, is going to be bad.
Wow. All right, Brandy, it's going to be interesting to see how all of this shakes out. We know you'll stay on top of it.
Yeah.
Yep. So I had to play that 5 minutes, 7 seconds long. And if you notice how pretentious Mayor Durkan is, you call that a mayor? Good grief. Sorry to hear about that. One of the most tyrannical scum queens right now in that town. And it's very disturbing indeed. And I always recommend this to all my beautiful people in that area, especially the first responders, the public employees across the board. Throw the Roe v. Wade at them. Give them a taste of their own confounded medicine. Because they're trying to take away, deprive your right of privacy, which I'll address later on. So I'm going to keep on going here. Says another unnamed patrol officer says she hopes Seattle will scrap the draconian mandates. She adding she applied for religious exemption, but doesn't believe it will be approved. Losing even 75 officers in one day. The response time for the city will go up drastically, said the officer. I will continue working until the day that they fire me, and that's about all that I can do, he added. The Seattle Police Department has already lost about 300 officers since the Black Lives Matter defund the police crusade began after Floyd's death, which was socially engineered, of course. Hire scumbags on buses going around the country trying to shake things up. I know that for a fact. All right. Mayor Jenny Durkan defended the vaccine mandates in an email this week urging the police holdouts to get the COVID injection before the deadline. We value each of you, and we don't want you to lose as employees, Durkin said in the email. But the people that count on you the most are the ones that need you to get vaccinated. Yeah, really? Huh. I just wonder how many illiterates you've been chatting with, probably talking to yourself. In response to the imminent law enforcement crisis in the city, interim police chief Adrian Diaz advised his department to transition into phase 3 mobilization starting October 13th, which requires all sworn personnel to be on standby duty to respond to 911 calls, according to Fox 13 News. Oh, yes. So it is going to be a big battle, of course, on this ordeal. And I do find this very disturbing indeed. Form of involuntary servitude, right? Oh, for sure. But it's for our own safety. Even though the vaccine was never been thoroughly approved or did a lot of research. It was fast tracked. That's okay. Well, I don't see it that way. And here's the thing. I'm like looking at the State of Washington's Declaration of Rights, Article 1. In his Section 1 here, all political powers inherited in the people and governments derived as just powers and consent of the governed and are established to protect and maintain individual rights. It looks like Seattle would want to do that, right? Jerk off jerkin. And of course, just let you know Section 2, the Constitution, the United States Supreme Law of the land. Here's Section 3, personal rights. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Let me just go down here to 7. Invasion of private affairs or home prohibited. No person shall be disturbed in his private affairs or his home invaded without authority of law. So it's funny because this is considered a private affair. They won't invade your privacy by you taking a shot and showing proof. Think about that. It's called government intrusion. That includes the public employees as well. They have rights too, folks. I don't care if you like them or not. They have rights just like you. So, and of course, there's no such thing as irrevocable privilege, franchise, or immunity prohibited. There's no such thing as irrevocable privilege. There's Section 8. No law granting irrevocably any privilege, franchise, or immunity shall be passed by the legislature. But you can't really just do it instantaneously, right? And of course, you can hit 11, religious freedom. It tells you all about it. So they try to use the exemptions. And they shall not be infringed, according to this. And no religious qualification shall be required at any public office. So if you want to run for office, that's really it. But there's a religious freedom here. Folks can look it up. And see, it's more than just getting the exemption card, folks, okay? Way I'm looking at this. Of course, special privileges and immunities prohibited. Section 12, no law shall be passed granting to any citizen, class of citizens, or corporation or other municipal privileges or immunities, which upon the same terms shall not equally belong to all citizens or corporations. So, mandates, all that, edicts, invalid. And we'll hit 23 on this one here. Section 23, it means here, sorry about that. Bill of attainder, ex post facto law, etc. No bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligations of contracts shall ever be passed. Not including the city of Seattle. That's their oath to protect and defend both the U.S. and their own state constitution. All right, so still, it's an edict, null and void. And if we get hit 29, Section 29 says here, constitutional mandatory. The provisions of this Constitution are mandatory unless expressed by words. They are declared to be otherwise. All right, and of course, 30, rights reserved. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny others retained by the people. So the people of Seattle got that power over these elected clown, or maybe clowns, or whoever agrees with jerkins, all right? So we can hit 32, fundamental principles, section 32. A frequent recurrence to fundamental principles is essential to the security and individual right and the perpetuity of free government. Not telling you for your own good. And you know what? I'll say this. What recall this idiot with all due respect. Section 33, recall of elected officers. Any elected public officer of the state of Washington, except judges of the courts of record, is subject to recall and discharge by the legal voters of the state or the political subdivisions of the state from which he was elected whenever petition demanded his recall. So, reciting that such officer has committed some act or acts of malfeasance or misfeasance while in office, or who has violated his oath of office, stating that matters complained of signed by the percentages of the qualified electors, therefore, hereafter, provided to percentage required to be computed from the total number of votes cast for all candidates for his said office to which he was elected at the preceding election is filed with an officer with whom a petition for nomination or a certificate for nomination to such office must be filed under the laws of the state, and the same office shall call a special election as provided by the general election laws of the state, and the result determined as therein provided. I say just recall her. Of course, his is under plurality, so all you gender-neutral clowns out there who like to change pronouns, shut up, don't even bother me. All right? So those are the things I say the city of Seattle, the mayor, is violating under Declaration of Rights. And we can go a little further here. I do a little homework. Remember, Washington has a Public Employees Relations Commission, which is pretty cool. I looked into it for states and so for the public employees for the state of Washington and their subdivisions, etc., or municipalities, you can call it. And I'm looking on here on their public employees' rights, and this is interesting here. There's a section called section 41.56.141. There's a Public Employees Collective Bargaining Act, and I'm gonna look through here. I'm just gonna see. Let's see what for the employees. Let's just check this out here. It says here. This is 140.1.140. So it's RCW 41.56.140. Okay. Unfair labor practices for public employers enumerated. It shall be an unfair labor practice for a public employer to interfere with, restrain, or coerce public employees in the exercise of their rights guaranteed by this chapter. Subsection 1. Okay. 2. To control, dominate, or interfere with the bargaining representative. 3. To discriminate against a public employee who has filed an unfair labor practice charge. Or 4. To refuse to engage in collective bargaining with a certified exclusive bargaining representative. Well, I'm just wondering if they're all responsible for this, or Mayor Jerkin. Could you get her at least here on this subsection 1 of the unfair labor practices for public employers? And as it reads here, to interfere, restraint. I said I'll have to read it. You can look it up yourself. I'm going to put all these footnotes on this episode, folks, so you can actually read it yourself. And let's go see what the public and bargaining representative, very similar. Okay, to interfere, restrain, or coerce public employees in the exercise of their rights guaranteed by this chapter. So they got he got to represent his workers. Okay, cannot induce public, cannot harass the public employer either. So it says here, which is RCW section 41.56.150, unfair labor practice bargaining representative enumerated. And I was really looking at a few things here, and this one here is about the commission, which is section 41.56.160. Okay. And as this reads here, commission to prevent unfair labor practices and issue remedial orders and cease and desist orders. And there's 3 subsections here. This is what it says here. Subsection 1, the commission is empowered and directed to prevent any unfair labor practice and to issue appropriate remedial orders, provided that a complaint shall not be processed for any unfair labor practice occurring more than 6 months before the filing of the complaint with the Commission or in the Superior Court. This power shall not be affected or impaired by any means of adjustment, mediation, or conciliation in labor disputes that have been or may hereafter be established by law. So, don't pass the 6-month threshold. You have that 6-month limit, and it's very similar to other PERCs around the country. I know Florida has it, and a few other states. Plus, the National Labor Relations Board the same way. If you file unfair labor practice on the private sector, that's considered same thing, 6-month threshold. Let's see what subsection 2 has to say. If the Commission determines that any person has engaged or engaging in an unfair labor practice, the Commission shall issue and cause to be served upon an order requiring the person to cease and desist from such unfair labor practice and to take such affirmative action as will effectuate the purposes and policy of this chapter, such as payment of damages and the reinstatement of employees. Okay, so you can use that. Subsection 3, the Commission may petition the Superior Court for the county in which the main office of the employer is located or in which the person who has engaged or is engaging in such unfair labor practice resides or transacts business for the employment of his order and for appropriate temporary relief. And I read 2 in here, which I'm going to add that to the memo for PERCs. I'm going to put all these in here. And the public employees don't have the right to strike, which is pretty traditional. A lot of around each state in this nation. So they have those rights can be violated, and what the police officers can do and other first responders can do if necessary. So I always urge the people in there to support the officers. You're the union boss, not your business representative or constitutional officers. That's a fact. You're the boss, not them. They work for you in good faith. Everyone has a right to the duty of fair representation. I talked about that a while back too, saying this is why it's important that people take that stand. You don't have to use a religious exemption card. You got the state constitution and the Public Employees Collective Bargaining Act on the palm of your hands. Exercise it. Don't be the numbers. You're all human beings. And don't get me wrong, I have my battles with law enforcers, police officers in the past, but it's always on principle. No vindication. I don't wish anyone ill will, because they can do it to them. Everyone else can. It could be one big domino effect in Seattle. Why people are leaving there? Because you got a bunch of clowns think they're progressives, but they're stagnants. We can do one more thing here. This is from the Seattle ACLU website. I always look at this. And they had a resolution passed. The city council passed on February 18th, 2003. It's considered resolution number 30,578. Sponsored by Wills at the time. It's a resolution affirming the city of Seattle commitment to protecting the civil rights and civil liberties of all Seattle residents. It was based on the Patriot Act. Okay? Patriot Act resolution. However, this can be useful. And so, and the provisions here. Okay? There's some provisions here. I'll just read it, and I'll just definitely add this to my footnotes as well. And it says here, whereas the city of Seattle is proud of its long distinguished tradition of protecting civil rights and civil liberties of all of its residents, and affirming the fundamental rights of all people, and the Bill of Rights of the of the United States Constitution and the Declaration of Rights of the State of Washington guarantee all people living in the city of freedom of speech, assembly, privacy, equality before the law, and the presumption of innocence. Access to counsel and due process in judicial proceedings, and the protection from unreasonable searches and seizures. So, that right there, done. It's done. Doesn't matter if it's foreign or domestic. Okay, this is why I find this, what they're doing, is very unacceptable. And I'll do another one more here on the, one of their whereas the Council of the City of Seattle believes that there is not need to be a conflict between security and the preservation of liberty, and that the residents of the city and this nation can be both free and safe. Okay, so, and they have concurred it, and says here, affirmed the city of Seattle's support for the fundamental constitutionally protected civil rights and liberties of all of our residents, and oppose of the measures that infringe upon such civil rights and liberties, and or that single out individuals for legal scrutiny or enforcement activity based solely on their country of origin, religion, ethnicity, or immigration status. And there's things on the police codes as well. So, even though it's against talk about the Patriot Act, they do honor the Bill of Rights. You know what? Utilize this document against her and cohorts. It's all on his face, prima facie, checkmate. And I know people say they don't really care about it. Why treat them any different? If they think you're a bunch of prostitutes, ridicule them. Ridicule her. Because she's no oath breaker, but a tyrannical scum queen. And anyone out there that want to defend her, bring it. Prove me wrong if you dare. And that will be it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or someone's interested in check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence to the core. For the I'll leave all the footnotes of this episode on my Spreaker page. If you want to contact me, you can go to via email at LokiLuck03@protonmail.com. If you're going to do a donation, you go to paypal.me or cash.app/LokiLuck3. If you want to support InfoWars, it's cool. Sometimes Alex Jones can be a real loudmouth, pain in the ass at times. But one thing I always tell folks, even with this particular institution, I don't go by the loudmouth mindset, but the information. And a person like myself, learn about Alex Jones about 18, 19 years, which is fine, but this stuff I learned about long before I knew about InfoWars or Mr. Jones. So always observe responsibly. Once again, thank you for your time, but always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.